Maya had made the park her home. Each morning before sunrise, she packed her belongings into her tattered backpack and walked the familiar path to school. Despite her circumstances, she maintained her appearance and her grades, knowing the importance of blending in with her classmates. Her teachers saw a diligent student, her friends saw a cheerful companion, but none saw the truth of her nights spent alone under the open sky. The park, a sprawling expanse with its manicured lawns and flowering bushes, became her sanctuary as dusk fell. She had found a secluded spot behind a cluster of thick bushes, close enough to the public restrooms for convenience, but hidden from the casual observer's view. Here, she laid out her scant bedding, a collection of old newspapers, and a threadbare blanket she had found in a donation bin. Her evenings were quiet. After finishing her homework by the light of a nearby street lamp, she would often sit and listen to the sounds of the city winding down for the night. The distant laughter of families returning home, the faint barks of neighborhood dogs, and the occasional rustle of leaves in the gentle night breeze were her nightly companions. Despite the hardships, Maya held on to a sliver of hope. Her mother, once vibrant and full of stories, now lay in a hospital bed, fighting a losing battle with illness. The medical bills had quickly consumed their meager savings, leading to their eviction. Maya had insisted on staying close to the school and hospital, unwilling to leave her mother's side during the visiting hours she treasured. Each morning, after spending the night alone in the park, she faced the school day with a brave face. Her friends remained unaware of the adversity she battled. She feared the stigma of homelessness might change their behavior towards her. Keeping her secret, however, grew heavier with each passing day. Officer James patrolled the area regularly. His keen eyes began to notice signs of her presence in the park: a neatly folded blanket tucked behind a bush, food wrappers carefully disposed of in nearby bins. His concern grew with each discovery, yet he bided his time, understanding that whoever was behind this needed more than just a directive to leave. They needed help. Maya's routine continued, each day a mirror of the last, a cycle of school, solitude, and silent resilience. Unbeknownst to her, the careful observations of Officer James would soon catalyze a change in her life, a shift towards security and warmth that she had not dared to hope for. But for now, she gazed at the stars above, drawing comfort from their steady light, her thoughts drifting to her mother, the hospital, and a future filled with uncertainty. Officer James had long familiarized himself with every corner of the local park, recognizing the usual picnic-goers and joggers, the dog walkers, and the late-evening readers who settled under the lamps. Yet, it was a subtle anomaly that drew his attention, a certain consistency in the arrangement of personal items discreetly placed behind a large cluster of bushes. A neatly folded blanket, a small stack of books, and a few plastic containers seemed out of place in the otherwise pristine environment. His initial thoughts leaned towards someone forgetting their belongings, but as the items remained and subtly shifted locations with each day, a pattern emerged. These were not forgotten but carefully placed for reuse. The realization brought a twinge of concern. Someone was making the park their home. Determined to understand the full scope of the situation, Officer James adjusted his patrol times, blending his duty with watchful vigilance. As dusk turned into evening, he maintained a discreet distance, his presence masked by the shadows of the trees. It was on one such evening, with the sun just dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows across the grass, that he saw her, a young girl, her movements quick and practiced as she approached the hidden spot. Maya seemed to scan the surroundings before she proceeded, her small figure darting behind the bushes to retrieve and arrange her sleeping area. James observed her, noting the cautious efficiency in her actions, the way she settled into the spot with a resigned familiarity. He stayed back that evening, choosing observation over intervention. It was important to understand her situation better before taking any action that might scare her or drive her away. He noted her school uniform, the books, her methodical preparation for the night. It all spoke of a child trying desperately to maintain some semblance of normalcy. The following day, Officer James returned during his usual patrol, but earlier in the afternoon, he approached the spot, now empty but clearly arranged for return. His decision was made. He would return that evening, introduce himself, and offer the help it was clear she needed. That evening, as the park began to empty and the coolness of night began to settle in, Officer James made his way back to the secluded spot. He waited nearby, ensuring he was visible enough not to startle her upon her return. As Maya arrived, her initial reaction was a slight stiffening, a pause as her eyes met his. Her wariness was palpable, a clear indication of her vulnerability. "Hello there," Officer James started, keeping his voice low and friendly. "I've noticed you've been spending a lot of time here, and I wanted to make sure you're okay. My name is James, and I'm here to help, not to make things harder for you." The encounter that evening marked the beginning of change for Maya, her first real interaction in weeks with someone who acknowledged her plight and extended a hand with sincerity. For Officer James, it was a pivotal moment, an opportunity to make a significant difference in a young life seemingly caught in a cycle of silent struggle. As Maya watched Officer James approach, her heart raced with a mix of fear and relief. Despite her initial instinct to flee, she stayed, sensing a genuine kindness in his demeanor. He sat down at a respectful distance on the grass, his posture relaxed, an open sandwich packet in hand. "Here," Officer James said, offering a sandwich to her. "I thought you might be hungry." Hesitantly, Maya accepted the food, her stomach rumbling audibly, a small smile breaking through her wariness. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Officer James nodded, his eyes softening. "You don't have to tell me anything you're not comfortable sharing," he began, "but I want you to know that whatever you tell me stays between us. I'm here to help you, not to get you in trouble." Encouraged by his reassurance, Maya took a deep breath and began to unravel her story. "It's just me and my mom," she started, her voice steadying with each word. "She got really sick a few months ago. Hospital bills piled up, and we couldn't afford our place anymore." She paused, taking a bite of her sandwich, her eyes distant. "She's still in the hospital now, and I didn't want to leave her. I didn't have anywhere else to go." Officer James listened intently, his experience in handling delicate situations guiding his response. "I'm really sorry to hear that, Maya. It sounds incredibly tough, but you're not alone in this now. We can find you a safe place to stay." Maya's eyes flickered with a mix of hope and skepticism. "But my mom, I need to be near her. I visit her every day." Understanding her predicament, Officer James nodded. "We'll make sure you can continue to see your mom. Let's figure this out together." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small notebook. "Let's start by getting some help from people who know how to handle these situations better than I do." As the evening air grew chillier, Maya felt a warmth she hadn't felt in weeks, a sense of security. Officer James made a few calls right there in the park, speaking quietly as Maya finished her sandwich. He contacted a social worker, explaining the urgency and sensitivity of Maya's situation. After ending the calls, he turned back to Maya. "I've got someone coming who can help us make sure you have a safe place tonight, and we'll work out a plan for you to stay close to your mom. Does that sound okay to you?" Maya nodded, the weight of her world slightly lifted by the promise of help. Officer James's approach, offering both immediate aid and a plan for ongoing support, provided Maya with a glimmer of hope. As they waited together for the social worker to arrive, Maya felt a rare feeling of gratitude mixed with relief that she was no longer facing her challenges alone. Officer James watched as Maya hugged her knees, her eyes fixed on the dim lights of the park. The night was quiet around them, the usual bustle of the city seemed distant and muted. He could see the worry etched into her face, the fear of what might happen next, not just to her, but to her mother as well. "Maya," he began, his tone gentle, aiming to reassure her, "I know this is all very overwhelming, but you're not alone in this anymore. We're going to make sure both you and your mom have what you need." Maya looked up, her expression a mix of hope and uncertainty. "But I can't be too far from the hospital. I need to see her. She depends on me." Officer James nodded understandingly. He pulled out his phone again and dialed the number for the local social services, explaining Maya's situation with clarity and urgency. He requested that they expedite her case due to the delicate nature of her mother's health and Maya's living situation. While he talked, Maya listened, her fingers nervously playing with the edge of her blanket. Officer James finished the call and turned back to her. "They're going to help us find a solution tonight, and we'll make sure it's somewhere close to the hospital. That's a promise." The social worker arrived within the hour. Her name was Ms. Carter, a kind-faced woman with a gentle demeanor. She kneeled beside Maya, speaking softly, "Hi Maya, I'm here to help you. Let's talk about what you need to feel safe and supported while we sort everything out." Maya took a deep breath, bolstered by the presence of another ally. Together, they discussed her immediate needs and the importance of staying near her mother. Ms. Carter assured her that they would find temporary housing close to the hospital and began making arrangements on her phone. As they spoke, Officer James watched, his promise to Maya not just a statement of intent, but a commitment he planned to keep. "We're also going to work on getting you some other types of support, like counseling and access to resources for your schooling. You've been managing incredibly well, but you shouldn't have to do this alone." Maya felt a surge of gratitude. For weeks, she had been shouldering her burdens in solitude, and now, finally, she had not just one, but two people advocating for her well-being. As Ms. Carter continued to coordinate with housing services, Officer James gave Maya a small, reassuring smile. "We'll get through this," he said, his voice firm with conviction. "You focus on being a kid and on your visits with your mom. Let us handle the rest." That night, as they walked to the temporary housing arranged by Ms. Carter, a small but cozy apartment just a few blocks from the hospital, Maya felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The promise made by Officer James, now supported by tangible actions, filled her with a newfound hope. For the first time in months, she felt that perhaps, just perhaps, things might start to get better. The morning had started like any other since Maya moved into the temporary housing. She had just begun to adjust to her new routine when Ms. Carter arrived unexpectedly, her expression somber. "Maya, we need to go to the hospital," she said gently. "Your mother's condition has worsened overnight." Panic gripped Maya's heart as she grabbed her jacket, the walls of the small apartment suddenly feeling as if they were closing in on her. Ms. Carter drove, and Maya sat in silent terror, her mind racing with fear and worst-case scenarios. At the hospital, Officer James was waiting. He had heard the news early that morning and rushed over, knowing Maya would need a familiar face. Seeing him, Maya felt a momentary relief amidst her swirling anxieties. His presence was a steady force, and without a word, he offered a comforting arm as they walked to her mother's room together. The news from the doctors was dire. Maya's mother had entered a critical phase, and the prognosis was uncertain. Maya spent hours by her mother's bedside, holding her hand, whispering words of love and encouragement, hoping she could somehow will her mother to fight through. Officer James stayed with Maya throughout, stepping out only to bring food and drinks, ensuring she ate something despite her lack of appetite. He spoke little, providing a comforting presence more through his actions than words. As the hours turned into days, Maya and Officer James found solace in brief conversations during the long waits. Maya opened up about her dreams, her fears, and her memories of better times with her mother. Officer James shared stories from his own life, including challenges he had faced and overcome. Their bond deepened, grounded in the shared understanding of loss and the resilience of the human spirit. One evening, as they sat in the hospital's dimly lit cafeteria, Officer James looked at Maya with a sincere expression. "Maya, no matter what happens, you're not alone," he said earnestly. "You have people who care about you, who will stand by you." Maya nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. It was a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless, to know she had someone to rely on. Officer James's promise was not just about providing help. It was about being there, truly being there, in her darkest hours. The twist of fate at her mother's sudden decline was a harsh blow, one that could have easily broken her. However, the unexpected depth of her relationship with Officer James provided a foundation of support. It didn't erase her pain, but it helped her bear it, giving her the strength to face whatever lay ahead with a steadfast ally by her side. The dreaded moment arrived quietly one early morning. Maya's mother, after days of battling in the hospital, succumbed to her illness. The world seemed to stop for Maya as she sat numbly by her mother's bedside, her hand still clasping the now silent one that had comforted her throughout her life. Her anchor, her world, her mother was gone. In the days that followed, Maya moved through her routines mechanically, enveloped in a fog of grief. The loss felt overwhelming, a vast emptiness that threatened to swallow her whole. School, once a place of refuge and normalcy, now seemed trivial and unbearable. Friends' attempts at consolation felt distant and disconnected. Maya felt truly alone, adrift in an ocean of despair. Officer James, having promised to be there for her, kept his word. He attended the funeral, standing quietly by her side, a solid presence amidst the swirl of sympathetic murmurs and somber faces. After the service, as the attendees drifted away, he approached Maya, his expression one of gentle concern. "Maya, I know this is incredibly hard," he said softly, "and I know I'm not a replacement for your mom, but I'm here for you, for whatever you need." In the following weeks, Officer James made sure to check in on Maya daily. He arranged for her to start counseling with a therapist who specialized in grief and loss. Recognizing the importance of continuity and stability, he also coordinated with her school to provide support through her teachers and school counselor. Some days, Maya barely spoke, consumed by her sorrow. On these days, Officer James would simply sit with her, sometimes in silence, sometimes talking softly about his own experiences with loss, sharing stories of how he navigated his darkest days. His presence became a comforting constant, a reminder that she was not completely alone in her grief. One particularly difficult evening, as they sat on a park bench, the very place where they had first truly connected, Officer James said, "Maya, it's okay to feel lost right now. Grief is like a sea. It ebbs and flows, and sometimes it storms. But remember, you have a lifeboat. You're not alone." These words, simple yet profound, struck a chord with Maya. She realized that while the loss of her mother had created a void, her life still held anchors. People like Officer James who cared deeply and were there to help her weather the storm of her grief. As weeks turned into months, the acute pain of her mother's death began to dull, morphing into a deep sadness that pained less sharply with time. Maya found solace in her counseling sessions, in the steady routine Officer James helped maintain, and in the knowledge that she had someone who stood by her promise, offering a semblance of family in her loneliest hours. The despair of loss never fully dissipated, but with Officer James's unwavering support, Maya began to navigate her new reality. She learned to cherish the memories of her mother, to embrace her grief without letting it consume her, and to lean on those who offered their strength when hers faltered. In the wake of her mother's passing, Maya's life gradually began to find a new rhythm, albeit a somber one. She returned to school and continued her counseling sessions, but the void left by her mother's absence was profound. Each day, she grappled with her loneliness, trying to piece together a semblance of normalcy from the fragments of her shattered world. Officer James and his wife, Ellen, had become increasingly involved in Maya's daily life, stepping into the void as much as they could. Ellen, having followed her husband's journey with Maya from the start, felt a deep compassion for the young girl who had shown such resilience in the face of unimaginable loss. One evening, as they sat in their living room, a space that had become a second home to Maya, James and Ellen shared a look, a silent agreement that something more needed to be done. After Maya had left for the night, they sat down to discuss her situation more formally. "Ellen, we've been supporting Maya as much as we can, but I think she needs more stability, something permanent," James started, his voice heavy with concern. Ellen nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "I've been thinking the same. She's like the daughter we never had. What if we could make that official? What if we consider adoption?" The word hung in the air, both daunting and filled with potential. Adoption was a big step, one that would change all their lives forever. They discussed the practicalities, legal implications, their age, the impact on their lifestyle, and most importantly, how Maya might feel about it. After several long discussions and nights of contemplation, they decided to broach the subject with Maya. The following week, they invited her over for dinner, a meal that had become a regular part of their week, but this time with a different agenda. Maya sensed something was different as soon as she entered the house. The air was thick with anticipation, and for a moment, her heart raced with anxiety. But the warm smiles from James and Ellen eased her nerves as they sat down to eat. After the meal, James took a deep breath, glanced at Ellen for support, and turned to Maya. "Maya, you know how much Ellen and I care about you. You've become a part of our family, and we've been thinking about how we can best support you moving forward." Ellen took over, her voice gentle but firm. "We want to offer you more than just a temporary place to stay or someone to talk to when things get tough. We want to give you a permanent home with us, if that's something you'd want too. We're talking about adoption." Maya froze, her fork halfway to her mouth, her eyes wide with a mix of surprise and uncertainty. She set the fork down slowly, her mind racing through a torrent of emotions: shock, fear, hope, and an overwhelming sense of belonging she hadn't felt since her mother's death. "Really?" she whispered, barely audible over the thumping of her heart. "Yes, really," James affirmed, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "Only if you want it, though. We want you to feel safe, loved, and permanently part of this family." Tears welled up in Maya's eyes as the offer sank in. The thought of having a family again, of not having to feel alone anymore, filled her with an unexpected warmth. She nodded slowly, a smile breaking through her tears, a smile that spoke of new beginnings and newfound solace. The weekends at Officer James and Ellen's house began to shape a new chapter in Maya's life, a chapter marked by the warmth of a family she was slowly becoming a part of. Each Friday after school, she would pack a small bag for the weekend, her heart lighter with each visit, anticipation growing for the time spent in their comforting presence. The couple welcomed her with open arms, each weekend carefully planned to not only bring joy, but to solidify the bonds of this emerging family. They introduced Maya to routines and traditions that had long been part of their household. Saturday mornings started with a hearty breakfast, where stacks of pancakes were served at the kitchen table, adorned with lively conversations and laughter. James taught Maya how to tend the garden, showing her how to plant seeds and explaining the satisfaction of watching something grow, a metaphor not lost on Maya. Ellen shared her love for books, passing on novels that were appropriate for Maya's age, discussing the characters and the plots as they lounged on the sofa on lazy Saturday afternoons. They also included Maya in the small, everyday tasks that make up a family's life. She helped prepare meals, set the table, and was even given the responsibility of choosing the movie on Saturday nights. These activities, mundane for some, were precious to Maya, who cherished the sense of belonging and the shared responsibility that came with them. Emotionally, the transition was smoothed by the open and honest communication that James and Ellen nurtured in their home. They encouraged Maya to express her feelings, whether of grief for her mother or her fears and hopes about the future. Ellen often reminded Maya that it was okay to miss her mother and that grieving was not a process with a set timeline. One particular weekend, as they were preparing dinner together, Ellen looked over at Maya and said, "You know, being family doesn't mean you forget the ones you've lost. It means you have more shoulders to lean on when the memories get heavy." These words struck a deep chord in Maya. She realized that having a new family in James and Ellen didn't diminish the love she had for her mother. It simply meant she had more love around her to help carry the weight of her loss. As weeks turned into months, the initial awkwardness that Maya felt gradually melted away, replaced by a deep-seated feeling of security and acceptance. She started to refer to James and Ellen as Mom and Dad, initially hesitating but soon with increasing confidence as their encouragement and love never wavered. The process of formal adoption moved forward with the couple's steady guidance, each legal step explained and every document shared with Maya, ensuring she felt included and important in every decision. As the date of the adoption hearing approached, the reality of her new beginning became tangible, filled with the promise of continued love and the stability she had longed for since the darkest days of her life in the park. After several months of weekend visits, the bonds between Maya and Officer James and Ellen deepened into something indistinguishable from a natural family connection. Each visit reinforced the feeling that this was where Maya belonged, where she was meant to be. The laughter, shared meals, and quiet evenings spent discussing books or watching films had woven a fabric of familiarity and affection that Maya had desperately missed. During this period, Maya had also reconnected with her estranged grandmother, who, upon learning of her situation, had reached out wanting to be part of her life. They had spent some time together, and while her grandmother was kind and clearly regretful of the lost years, Maya couldn't help but feel more at home with James and Ellen. The environment they provided was filled with the nurturing and support she needed to heal and grow. Recognizing the natural affinity Maya had with James and Ellen, and observing the genuine happiness in Maya's demeanor after each weekend spent with them, her grandmother made a selfless suggestion. During a quiet afternoon visit with Maya at a local cafe, she gently broached the subject. "Maya, I've seen how happy you are with James and Ellen," her grandmother said, her voice tinged with a mix of sadness and resolve. "I can see the love and the bond you share with them. It's clear they can provide the best home for you, the stability and the future you deserve." Maya, touched by her grandmother's understanding and love, felt a mix of relief and gratitude. It was a difficult conversation, acknowledging that while they had a connection, the best place for her was with James and Ellen. With her grandmother's blessing, Maya approached James and Ellen about the possibility of making their family arrangement permanent. That evening, sitting in their living room with the golden light of sunset streaming through the windows, Maya shared her feelings and her grandmother's thoughts. James and Ellen exchanged a look, a mix of joy and solemnity. They had hoped for this moment, but were prepared to support whatever decision was best for Maya. "Maya," James started, his voice steady and sure, "we love you. We've come to think of you as our daughter, and nothing would make us happier than to make that official, if that's what you want." Ellen reached out, taking Maya's hands in hers. "You are home with us, Maya. Let's make it forever." The decision was made with hearts full of emotion. They contacted their lawyer the next day to begin the adoption process. The paperwork was filed, and the court date was set. Maya, James, and Ellen attended together, a united front full of anticipation and hope. The judge's approval was the final seal on their new beginning. As the gavel fell, formalizing the adoption, tears of joy and relief flowed freely among the newly official family. They left the courtroom hand in hand, ready to begin their lives together, not just as a family of circumstance, but one of choice and deep, abiding love. The day the adoption was finalized marked a profound turning point in Maya's life. The courtroom, usually a place of solemn legal proceedings, was filled with an air of celebration for Maya, Officer James, and Ellen. As they stood before the judge, a feeling of finality and new beginnings permeated the air, sealing their commitment to each other as a family. When the judge pronounced the adoption decree, it wasn't just a legal formality, but a declaration of unconditional belonging and love. After the court session, the newly affirmed family drove home, the car filled with an atmosphere of light-hearted joy. James had arranged a small celebration at their home, inviting close friends and colleagues who had supported them through their journey. The house was decorated with streamers and balloons, festive symbols of the joyous occasion. Maya, who had once felt the acute pang of loneliness and uncertainty, now basked in the warmth of a community that had gathered to celebrate her new beginning. Ellen hugged her tightly, whispering in her ear, "Welcome home, Maya, forever." These words, simple yet profound, echoed deeply within Maya, instilling a sense of permanence and security she had longed for. During the celebration, Maya took a moment to step into the backyard, looking out at the garden she had helped tend. The flowers blooming there were like a metaphor for her own life, carefully nurtured, finally flourishing. She felt a profound connection to this place, now truly her home, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. Inspired by her own experiences and the support she had received, Maya proposed an idea to James and Ellen. She wanted to give back, to help others who were facing difficulties like hers. With her family's encouragement, she began organizing a community outreach program for children facing homelessness and loss. The project started small, with weekend art classes held in the park where Maya had once found her temporary refuge. She used her love for art to connect with other children, providing a safe space for them to express themselves and their struggles through creativity. James and Ellen supported her wholeheartedly, providing supplies and helping to coordinate with local agencies to reach as many children as possible. Months later, the community project culminated in a public art exhibition held in the very same park. The event showcased the children's artwork, each piece a story of resilience and hope. Maya spoke at the event, sharing her story publicly for the first time. She talked about her nights in the park, the loss of her mother, the profound impact of finding a new family, and the importance of community support. The event received local media coverage, bringing further attention to the issue of child homelessness and the power of community assistance. Maya stood at the exhibition, surrounded by her artwork and the children she had helped, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. Officer James and Ellen watched Maya with immense pride, witnessing the young girl who had once been shrouded in uncertainty, now shining brightly as a beacon of hope and strength for others. Maya's journey had come full circle, from receiving help to giving it, anchored by the love and support of her family and community. As the sun set on the day of the exhibition, Maya, James, and Ellen stood together, hands joined, looking at the vibrant display of art and heart. The challenges of the past seemed like distant echoes, overshadowed by the joy and love that filled their present. Maya's story, marked by trials, had transformed into a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of love and belonging.